Hello everybody, welcome to the Changin Gears Show with your host, Chris Gear. Welcome to the new studio. So I decided to put something together that better suited this show, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So this is where we're going to be filming most of our episodes from now on. So yeah, I hope you guys like it, and let's get started. So as you guys know, on this show, we cover mostly combat sports. Mostly mixed martial arts, you know, the UFC and such. So for those of you who aren't as into mixed martial arts as I am, I decided it would be a good idea to give not only you guys, but the show a good foundation. So welcome to the first episode of this series, this new series called Foundations. So mixed martial arts encompasses a wide variety of fighting styles and martial arts. Hence the name mixed martial arts. So I want to take each sport or each martial art in its own respect, and I want to talk about them individually. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about boxing. So without further ado, let's get started. So I love boxing. Boxing is probably my favorite martial art next to wrestling. I've boxed before. I never competed, but I did train. Boxing is a fantastic sport. I credit boxing to making me such a fan of mixed martial arts today. I think without boxing, if I never watched boxing, I wouldn't be nearly as much of a fan as I am today of mixed martial arts. So I give boxing a lot of credit, and I love boxing so much. So yeah, in this video, I want to just give an overview of boxing, kind of give the current state of boxing, give you guys a look at the current state of boxing, how I think boxing can improve, and I want to take some of my favorite fighters from a certain era of boxing, and we'll talk about them. So yeah, so boxing, not to bore you guys with a history lesson, but boxing it has its roots in ancient Greece. Obviously it was more of a gladiator style sporting event rather than what we know today. You know, it was bare knuckle. There's no gloves, obviously. They'd fight bare knuckle or with metal on their hands. Most of the time they'd kill each other or severely maim their opponents, which you don't see that today. Yeah, and the popularity of boxing then dropped after the fall of the Roman Empire, but then it picked back up in Britain, and it's evolved into something that is, you know, it's a fantastic sport. It's loved and participated in by almost every country in the world. Every corner of the world, you know, there's a boxing match. So yeah, so the current state of boxing, I would say, is a little lacking.
Logan Paul in the pink prime. Logan has the better boxing skills, or at least from what we've seen, Ariel. What do you expect from Dennis once he starts throwing punches?
What boxing currently needs is one definitive league. Like the UFC, like the NFL, like the MLB and NBA. Those are all definitive leagues. They're all competing for the same championship. They're all competing for the same belt. And yeah, I think that's what boxing needs. Boxing, you see all these different belts. You know, the WBC belt, and then you got another belt. And you see these guys, you know, hanging all these belts off of them, which I think not only kind of slows the sport down, but it really makes the sport a little hard to watch for me. Because you have these guys with all these belts, you have all these different organizations, and I just get so mad because seeing what the UFC has done, they've taken mixed martial arts, they made a league, it's a brand, it's an organization, and all these guys are competing for the same belt. Or if you're a light heavyweight, you're competing for that light heavyweight belt. You know, middleweight, same thing. And that's what boxing needs. Boxing needs one definitive league where all the fighters are competing for the same belt. And I think if boxing had that, it would skyrocket. And Dana White is actually, and it's funny because when I was planning this video, I was going to talk about Dana White dipping his feet in boxing because he's talked about starting his own promotion or getting into it. And while I was planning this video, ESPN came out with an announcement from Dana White saying he was going to start his promotion, or he's going to start running a promotion, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that would be great for the sport, and I think that's fantastic. I think if there's one league, then all these fighters can compete for kind of the same belt, which makes for great competition. You can have a good ranking system. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with the boxing rankings right now. I don't even know if they have any. But I think that's what boxing truly needs. Is one definitive league where all these fighters compete for the same belt. And I think that would be great. I would watch that. I love watching boxing. It's just tough for me to watch because I know how it can be done so much better. Not saying I could promote it or run it that much better because I'm not a promoter, but I think that's what it needs. And that's how I think it can improve. So, it certainly didn't help with the rise of the UFC in 1993. The UFC, or mixed martial arts as a whole, I think is a more spectacular sport, as Joe Rogan has stated in an interview, or not an interview, it was some argument.
Your sport is getting swallowed. It's getting swallowed by a greater, more efficient, more spectacular sport.
But it's a spectacular sport. It encompasses a wide variety of fighting. And I think boxing is, at the end of the day, a limited form of fighting, but I still love boxing. I think it's a great sport. But the UFC certainly didn't help. But if you have, Dana White getting into it, then, he's promoted the UFC, and I think that would very, very much help the current state of boxing. So yeah, so my favorite era of boxing, when you think about the greats, you automatically think of Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather. You think about those guys. Joe Frazier, George Foreman. That's who you think of. But my favorite era of boxing is the 80s, 90s, like late 70s-ish. That's my favorite era. I think that was when boxing really had, a big steam, it had a lot of steam, big hype train. And that's my favorite era of fighting. I always refer to that era whenever I go back and watch boxing, or whenever I like to dissect a boxer. That's what I go to. Obviously, I can't cover all the greats in this video, or else it'd be 5 hours long. But we gotta give respect to the greats: Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Floyd Mayweather. These guys, they've built that sport into what it is. And yeah, you gotta pay your respects to them. But in this video, I do want to talk about just a select few fighters, and I want to start with Mike Tyson. So Mike Tyson is relatively known by everyone. Most of the world knows who Mike Tyson is. Mike Tyson was actually the youngest heavyweight champion at 20 years old. For reference, John Jones was the youngest champion in UFC history. I believe he was 23, 22. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll have to look it up, but that's for reference. So, and I believe Mike Tyson still actually holds that record for the youngest heavyweight champion. So he was born in 1966. His father left his family when he was only 2. His family moved to Brownsville after some financial struggles. Mike Tyson, by age 13, he had been arrested 30 times, and he met his trainer, Customato, while he was in high school fighting. And he trained during his high school years. His mother did die while he was in school and training, which definitely, hit Mike Tyson pretty hard. And he went pro in 1985, and he won his debut match by knockout. Cuss died soon after that from pneumonia. And you can tell Mike Tyson, I don't know if he openly talks about it, but You could definitely tell there's something different after Customato did pass away. But yeah, Mike kept winning, and he became champion in 1986. So only a year after his professional debut, he got that belt, and I think he held it until, I forget. I'll have to look that up, but I forget when he lost the belt. I believe it was to Buster Douglas.
Landing these. Oh, nice uppercut by Buster Douglas. Look at this. He's knocked down for the first time in his career. Mike Tyson hits the canvas. He's in big trouble. He's not going to make it. Unbelievable.
After he got knocked out. But yeah, so Mike Tyson started to kind of lose his edge after he started to rely on more of his raw power than his technique and ability. Mike Tyson was a great boxer. He had great movement. Obviously, that excellent power kind of overshadows the rest of his ability, but he had great movement, great head movement. He was fast, and he was a hell of a boxer. But once he started to kind of rely on his raw strength and power over his movement and technique, that's when you kind of see the downfall of Mike Tyson, or kind of that slight decline in his career. He went head-to-head with Holyfield, Evander Holyfield, and that's kind of where you see that decline. He lost by TKO, and then they set the rematch up, and Mike Tyson was actually disqualified due to him biting Holyfield's ear.
What happened here?
He got bit, I think.
Evander Holyfield, look out, he's pushed right here above us. A dirty Mike Tyson.
A lot of people know that infamous boxing match. Yeah, it's still frowned upon to this day, still talked about. But yeah, that was he bit a piece of Holyfield's ear off, and history was made. That infamous moment lives on to this day. And yeah, his next title shot after that was against Lennox Lewis. But at this point in Mike Tyson's career, he just did not have the fire to to continue pursuing boxing. He lost to Lennox Lewis by TKO. I think it was KO. And then he went on to lose a few more matches, and then he called it a career. So yeah, that was Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was a fantastic fighter. He recently fought, I don't really want to talk about that because I think that match shouldn't have happened. But Mike Tyson was a fantastic fighter. He's well known by many people. He's kind of a household name. And yeah, he was one of my favorites. Just the power combined with his movement and his ability made for just a hell of a fighter. He really pushed the kind of standard of heavyweights. I mean, he wasn't the biggest guy, but he sure could. He would just maul opponents. He would, he'd knock you out in the first minute, and he was just a knockout artist. Yeah, he really pushed the standard of what a heavyweight should be. Big, powerful, fast moving, just all around fantastic fighter. So yeah, another one of my favorites is actually, I just talked about him for a little bit, is Evander Holyfield. Evander Holyfield was a fantastic fighter. He was born in Alabama. He played football, which I think football is a great foundation for boxing. Explosiveness. He was a top amateur in the country, and he won a spot on the U.S. Olympic team, U.S. Olympic boxing team, that is. He turned pro after that, and then he fought in the light heavyweight division. A lot of people did say that Evander Holyfield was not big enough to compete in heavyweight. They said he was a cruiserweight, light heavyweight, but he proved them wrong. Because after that he moved to cruiserweight, and then he went to heavyweight. He fought George Foreman, he fought Holmes, and then he fought Mike Tyson twice. Again, that infamous moment, he was a Mike Tyson opponent. He got his ear bit off, or a little bit of his ear bit off. But yeah, no, Evander Holyfield was a very fast-moving, again, kind of the gold standard of what a heavyweight should be. Fast-moving, light on the feet, had very good power. Fought George Foreman, wobbled George Foreman, which you just never really saw.
Well, his arms do seem to be getting a little heavy.
Combination, staggered. Holyfield has staggered Foreman. He's got it going with 10 seconds left in round 3.
Yeah, I think I love Evander Holyfield. He's one of my inspirations. And it's actually funny. After I do talk about these guys, I want to kind of do a fantasy matchup of two of them that I'm talking about. So yeah, now moving on, I want to talk about one of my biggest inspirations. This guy was, when I did box, I did want to compete and go pro, but it didn't work out. I decided to pursue something else. But this guy was my biggest inspiration. I think he was a fantastic fighter, but he does have a bit of a tragic story. And if you guys are boxing fans, you know who I'm talking about. And that is Tommy the Duke Morrison. So Morrison was born in Arkansas and lived in Oklahoma most of his life. He actually starred in the 5th Rocky movie. His character was Tommy Gunn. And after that movie, he went on to fight Ray Mercer. So at the time, Ray Mercer and Tommy Morrison were both these undefeated prospects. They came head-to-head after Morrison had filmed the 5th Rocky movie, and Morrison did lose by KO.
Mercer with 2 good right hands. And now Mercer on Morrison in the corner. And Mercer's all over him, and Morrison in trouble. And Morrison goes down for the first time in his career.
It was a pretty rough thing to watch. It was a pretty rough KO. One of the most brutal I've ever seen in boxing. And his hype train kind of lost a lot of steam there. He lost a lot of fans. People thought he was, I guess, overhyped. That's what you say now. Which really did a little dent on his career. Not a huge one, but a little dent. But that was, a great match. I think the problem with Morrison, especially in that match, is obviously first he couldn't pace himself. Secondly, he kind of, when he was defending or kind of getting in the clinch, he would kind of leave his arms kind of draped like this. He would kind of leave himself open, which kind of left him open to uppercuts and like a short right hand, short jab, which I think that was kind of the recipe to his failure in that fight. But after that, he did eventually work his way back into a title fight against George Foreman. He won this, and he did become the WBO heavyweight champion.
Just a few bumps. Foreman chance go up, and Morrison stops him.
He lost that belt immediately after to Michael Bent.
Trying to end it early. And a good right by Bent. And Tommy Morrison is down at 2:05 of the first round. So Morrison connected and hurt Bent. Bent came back with a right hand and floors Morrison. Now Morrison has been down before in fights that he has won. And now Tommy Morrison gets hit with a left and he knocks Morrison down again. Tommy Morrison in deep trouble here in the first round. And a lot of time remaining in round number 1. You can see the bewilderment in the eyes of Tommy Morrison as Michael Bent from New York City looking to finish him off. And Bent just throwing nothing but haymakers right now. And Morrison in deep trouble. And Morrison is down. And the fight is over.
That fight was pretty short. He caught Morrison when he was coming in with a short left and put him down. Yeah. After that, Morrison started to do some bad things. Oh, well, he did do bad things his whole career, but he started to really get into drugs and alcohol. You could really see it in his looks. He started to look much older, much more like a biker than a boxer. And he pulled off some good wins. He won against Razor Ruddock, Donovan Razor Ruddock, but he lost his, I believe it was his last title bout to Lennox Lewis. It was a bit of a blowout. Lennox Lewis stopped him. He knocked him down quite a few times. And that was kind of the end of Morrison in his kind of title aspirations. He fought a few times after that. I believe, he won, but he was nowhere near title contention. He had a pretty horrible lifestyle from the moment he kind of started his career to the end of it. He was diagnosed with HIV, which they sacked him from boxing. They revoked his boxing license. He wasn't allowed to go near the sport again. And yeah, the tail end of his life, you could see the. I'll show some pictures, but yeah, it was a tragic story, and it sucked. It sucked to kind of hear his passing. But yeah, I mean, those are some of my inspirations. I just wanted to kind of go over some of those guys and talk about them. And now for this little fantasy matchup. So the fantasy matchup most people talk about is Tyson versus Morrison. I like I like Holyfield versus Morrison a lot better. I think that would have been a great match, and I think Evander Holyfield would have won. But you never know. I think Morrison had a lot of power in his left hand. I think he was a little more powerful than Evander Holyfield, but Holyfield was a fantastic fight. I mean, he knew how to pace himself. Morrison, not so much. But that's kind of my fantasy matchup. So yeah, that's that kind of puts this video at a good end. So, but again, boxing is one of my favorite sports. It's a widely respected sport, participated by every corner of the world, and I credit boxing to my love of mixed martial arts today. I think boxing is one of the, it's one of the first and one of the greatest. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please let me know what you guys want me to talk about next. And I hope you guys like this series. Let me know if you guys want anything else covered in this series, such as like a martial art or a specific fighter. Obviously, I can't cover every single great in every single sport, but if there's one you want me to talk about, just let me know in the comments below. I'll put them in my notes and I'll talk about them. So this was the Changin Gears Show with your host Chris Gear, signing out. See ya.